Kim Jong-un's message to the Eighth Party Congress and the military parade and his message that he sent to the Supreme People's Assembly, all of that had an important domestic focus, but no less importantly, it had an important message for the United States of America. It was we, the North Koreans, we are and we're going to remain a nuclear weapon state. A collateral message, I believe, was that it's now time to move beyond the idea of denuclearization. It's time to talk about something that North Korea has long wanted to talk about, and that is arms control. In their vision, arms control means constraining the United States, preventing the United States from carrying out nuclear or conventional attacks on North Korea. They also seek to eliminate the U.S.-South Korea Defense Treaty, remove U.S. troops from the Korean Peninsula, and eliminate the so-called nuclear umbrella by which the United States defends both South Korea, the Republic of Korea, and Japan.
The overall message to the US and to South Korea was that the ball is really in our court. North Korea will continue to move. They're not waiting for us to change our mind. And until we do, until we get back to the negotiating table, until we get an actual agreement in place, they will continue to develop their defensive capabilities and also to build peace through strength. When it comes to what Kim does next, we have to remember also they are also going through a lot of economic shocks and a lot of economic crisis, as is the rest of the world due to the pandemic. Their borders have been closed essentially since about January of last year. There's a lot for them to deal with to try and get back on track. I don't imagine that North Korea will be very quick to move into a more provocative, more aggressive mode.
President Trump, by virtue of his two summits and his Panmunjom meeting with the North Korean leader, gave the North Korean leader legitimacy in the eyes of the international community. What he got for it in return was a hollow piece of paper, the Singapore Agreement. Another part of President Trump's legacy was that his sole aim in this process of dialogue with the North Korean leader was to prevent North Korea from conducting nuclear weapons tests and long-range ballistic missile tests. And indeed, he did that. But the price that he paid for that was to look the other way as North Korea built up its nuclear weapons arsenal with virtually no complaint being made by the American president. I think what President Trump has essentially done is to tee up almost the inevitability that the United States is going to have to live with permanently a nuclear-armed North Korea.
The very summit-driven approach makes it harder to go back to a working level process. I think there's still a way to negotiate with the North Koreans that does involve Kim Jong-un without it being summit-driven. So for instance, the letters to Kim Jong-un, I think, can be used in a much more substantive way to make the proposals, to be able to talk about the nuclear issue with Kim Jong-un without having to bring in all the cameras and having to make all the arrangements as well.
The U.S. ROK alliance is going to be at the center of any efforts to manage the North Korea issue. The U.S.-South Korea relationship has been through some difficult times over the last 4 years during the Trump administration. And I've been very heartened to see that President Biden is placing a high priority on restabilizing and reinforcing the strength of the U.S.-South Korea alliance relationship going forward. It's going to be extremely helpful. But let's be frank, the United States and South Korea don't necessarily look at the North Korea situation the same way. South Korea, under President Moon, has adopted a very concession-oriented and conciliatory policy towards North Korea, conciliatory to a fault. The idea that the United States should unilaterally agree to concessions to North Korea in order to stimulate dialogue with North Korea is something that doesn't sit well with Washington. The good news is that we have a president who I think will be willing to be patient with South Korea, to listen carefully to what our allies have to say, and certainly to take their views into account as we develop our policy.
North Korea has demonstrated a pretty robust nuclear weapons capability, a pretty robust ballistic missile capability. How do we prevent them from continuing to develop while we're negotiating for the bigger goals? And that's really, I think, what we've been missing over the past several years. We have to have milestones along the way. Both sides have to have, small wins along the way in order to build the political cover to keep negotiating for the bigger things. I think one of the problems of the way that we've approached North Korea and North Korea's nuclear weapons program is that we've ascribed it a bit too much North Korea exceptionalism. We need to start thinking about this more strategically as to what is compelling to any country that has nuclear weapons to voluntarily relinquish them. We are still two countries that have a clash of values. What can we actually do to build that trust over time? And until we figure that out, we're not going to get to the end of the denuclearization road with North Korea. And I think that's really, what we need to be thinking about in terms of timing and pacing and all the things that would be entailed in trying to get North Korea to change its mind about the value of its nuclear weapons program.
We have to convince the North Korean leader that nuclear weapons are not his salvation. The way to do that is to demonstrate to the North Korean leader and his inner circle that their continued possession of nuclear weapons is leading to what I call overwhelming, massive pressure by the United States and the international community on every element of the international community's relationship with North Korea: economic, political, diplomatic, human rights, military, overt actions, covert actions. And this is going to be a very difficult thing to do and a very risky thing to do. If we do that, I believe that the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, being a rational person, and I believe he is, will make the right choice to go down a different path, a path other than nuclear weapons development, in order to preserve his regime.